right, y'all, back with another podcast. This time I'm joined by Zolotor. Did I say it right?
You did. Good job. Yeah, a lot of people, almost everybody gets it wrong at first, but Ethan Zolotor. Yeah.
All right, so we got Ethan here, and he is somebody who went to Japan and went to sit in Shonen Jump's studio in the editorial department and had a discussion with those editors and found out about the behind the scenes stuff for Manga Plus and how it works. And Ethan is no lightweight. He's been up in the producers space for indie manga and comics, going to conventions and so on. Y'all can check out his whole portfolio on his Instagram, link in the description box. So, real quick, bro, how you doing? And how did you start your journey into this?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Coffee. I'm excited to talk about this, and yeah, let's rewind a little bit and just kind of give some background. So I started out as an author, a novel writer, and I've been doing that publicly, trying to make a go at it since about 2019. And I have quickly scaled that up. I'll also preface by saying I do work a full-time job on top of this as an engineer, but I have grown to this to the point where comics and manga is become a second full-time job, and I'm almost at the point where I could choose to do that if I wanted to. But yeah, so I started out just taking my books to Comic-Con, and they have a very anime comic flair to them. I kind of pitch them as like X-Men meets Avatar: The Last Airbender with a spice of anime in it. And so that was I figured out the business side of it and quickly scaled up to where last year I did about 10 pretty large domestic Comic-Cons in the US, and I also did Tokyo Comic-Con in Japan. And then this year I have some opportunities to go to some Middle East Comic-Cons, to possibly some in Europe as well as Japan, and then I've got a whole lineup of American ones. So that's its own business, its own thing. But of course, I've grown up inspired by and loving Shonen Jump and manga, and so it's always been a dream to work in the manga and comic space. And about a year ago, I finally got to break ground on that as well.
Hmm. Um, so okay, that part I didn't know that you do have a day job as an engineer and so on. How did you manage to get such popularity? I don't know how many years it took you to get to this level of popularity where you say you can leave your engineering job and do this full time. How did you navigate your way to the point where you could secure connections and well influence in the space to where you could live off of it?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple factors there. One is I'm a sales engineer in my day job, and so I work with interpersonal skills a lot. And doing a Comic Con convention and being at an engineering convention are actually really not that different. You know, you're looking for the same levels of interest and engagement. You're answering questions about a product. It's just that at a Comic Con with your art, you care a whole lot more and you're a lot more enthusiastic about what you're doing. So I'd say that gave me an insane leg up. I know a lot of artists are very introverted. They don't like being out there in front of people. But for me, I got my pitch down. I'm really good at talking to people and working with crowds. So I'll be at a Comic Con during peak hours, and I can be telling a crowd of like 5 or 6 people about my book while I'm checking somebody else out. And so I very quickly just turned it into a profitable business. And then I'm also very good at networking because of my background of what I do. And so I've networked and I've just built up an independent machine where I have, local print houses in the Midwest that are in driving distance to pick up some of my printing. Sometimes when I have shows in that area, I have a network of people who help me print get some merch made, and they do it in their bigger batches, and so I get better pricing on them. All kinds of things like that. I've also just I have a very good visual aesthetic at my booth, and a lot of that's thanks to the artist of the manga, Rodrigo. He's done my book covers for a long time now, and so all those combinations, I did work my way into getting an agent that represents me at some of these shows, especially the domestic ones. And again, that's all networking. So I just eventually got to that point where these shows were very successful. People see you out there hustling consistently, grinding at your craft, getting your art out there because you're passionate about it. And if you have a good aesthetic and you can work with people well, at that point, you're pitchable to other events as you start to build up that audience. And so that's how my agent, who's amazing, got me into Tokyo Comic Con, and he gets me into a few domestically. I just very, very transparent. I pay for my booth at 90+% of the shows I do, but occasionally I will be guested. I'm starting to be guested at domestic shows more, and then I'm being guested at these international shows a bit more. And the reason for that is because they're getting foreigners to come to their shows, and a lot of them, especially like Middle East shows, they want that and they're willing to pay for it to get that like American culture over.
That is interesting. And how many years did it take you to reach this level of connections?
I would say, let's see, it really coming out of the lockdowns, right? Because there were no Comic Cons during the lockdowns. So I'd say 22 up to this point. So maybe 3 years. And I'm just now starting to get to that level where I'm being guested at some of these events. And, really, I haven't been guested at many events up until the end of last year. And then I've got a couple lined up this year. So it took a good 3 years of grinding. And keep in mind, I work a full-time job. I write novels. I storyboard and sketch sometimes the manga adaptation that I'm working on, and then I'm also on the weekends building this business and going to Comic Cons. So it's not like there's a lack of work. It may sound kind of short to say that I did all that in 3 years, but I have been grinding very, very hard.
That is insane, but very good and very inspiring. In just 3 short years, you managed to make huge progress. But, judging from your profile as well and the fact that you said you are in marketing, you're a people person. You know exactly what to do in a social environment to get people hooked. It's part of your profession. So,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I have those skills kind of built in, and
yeah,
and again, I want to be super transparent with everything here because it sounds amazing, but I will say, like, I don't have everything figured out, right? Like my online presence, my online marketing is really a minuscule part of my business right now. I think when I launch this manga formally, I'm gonna have a Kickstarter for it probably here in the next month, maybe 6 weeks. That's going to be my first real attempt at the marketing side of things online. It's just those people person skills and my ability, my business knowledge, and my ability to run a business that I can just run these conventions very profitably. So if I were to step off and do this full time right now, I'd be doing a convention almost every week of the year to do this full time. And that's exhausting and not necessarily something I want. So that's why I haven't taken this full time yet.
it wouldn't really be sustainable. Um, okay, y'all.
I mean, I will say this: it is sustainable for some people. Like I have a good friend who's been a lot of my created a lot of the web and network of people and vendors that I know. He does do this 48. I think he averages 46 to 48 shows a year. It's just a lifestyle that I don't want. It's basically we joke about this in my network of people at Comic Con. It's the carny life. You're basically a performer at a carnival, a circus that's traveling all the time. And while to me
Yeah.
personally that is fun, occasionally, I wouldn't mind doing it once a month. I would definitely not want to do it 80% of my time.
Yeah, totally. And okay, it can be sustainable, but you are a dude on a carnival carousel, and What happened to your friends who do this full time during the lockdown? Were they in a pinch?
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
that the people who do this full time and are like me that rely more on in person events, yeah, if in person events get shut down, you are in big trouble. You have to figure something else out. Somebody in our network, some people figure it out and make it work. There's somebody in my network of author friends that actually kind of force themselves to become very, very profitable and popular during that lockdown period, and that's how they launched their career. So
And how did they do
that's it.
that?
You know, an insane organic growth. It's actually a series called Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's really popular right now. It's booming. It got picked up by um, Seth MacFarlane's production company to have a TV show made out of it. So he's blown up in success. But he was really organic, and he got lucky where he worked with an audiobook company and just got one of the most talented guys in the world before he was really well known either. And the combination of the story they made and the narrator being insanely good, and it just caught on virally, and he blew up. So I do know some people that made it through that, but I know other people, my wife included in that, who during lockdowns, they lost all their source of revenue, or like 80% of their revenue. So yeah, that's another risk.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. Here at Coffee, we gotta disclose everything, especially when things come to the sustainability part. All right. So now the Middle East part blowing up. Yeah, guys, we're gonna get to the Japanese stuff, but this is also very important. Now, I have said that America, parts of Europe, the cultural Marxism has destroyed everything. The SJWs have invaded a lot of the indie spaces as well, and spewed their pollution in there. And the lockdowns didn't help either, making a lot of consumers weary and cautious to what they are going to be spending their money on. And now, despite America and Europe slightly falling apart, in not even slightly, like 75% of the indie entertainment market is like gone. Now the Middle East is rising. And you said earlier that they are bringing in a lot of international people, Americans as well, because they want a little bit of that American culture. Do you, based on your experience thus far, does the Middle East have the awareness that not all of the American culture is actually good in terms of this Marxism, right? That the people that they're actually inviting, are they the American creators who uphold the traditional standards of old school comics? Or are they just inviting any Western artist that has a following?
Yeah, so that is, look, the Middle East is very conservative in the contents that they're consuming. A lot of the stuff that's booming right now is like Saudi Arabia, UAE. That peninsula is having its boom. They're very much in a like 2000 or 1990s America kind of
Nice,
mindset,
good point.
where
Yeah.
to them Spider-Man and Batman and Superman are new and shiny and cool, and they love that. And they also have chic oil money and want to put on a production for their people or themselves, right? They just want to get celebs there, meet them, and if they can turn it into a business and make it profitable or break even, and they got to rub shoulders with celebrities, then they're happy. So they're definitely, but again, so it's not that they care about like your politics or your content per se, but they do. They do care about your content in terms of like, for example, that guy, Dungeon Crawler Carl. There is some more explicit content in his books, or my agent has asked me multiple times if I know certain types of content or people that would like to come to the show as well. And I sometimes I want to recommend somebody, but if they have certain types of explicit content or something, they would not be allowed into the show. So like if you're writing, let's just say in the kind of slop genre of books, romantasy is huge, right? All these smut books that are very sexual content, kind of pornographic in terms of their content, those are not going to be allowed into the Middle East. But in terms of like, they don't care if somebody is politically left-leaning or something like that, but is a great comic book artist. You know, they just want that core like late 90s comic book culture over there.
See, now this is extremely important because Saudi Arabia and Qatar. I interviewed, I don't know if you saw that, maybe it was 2 years ago or a year ago. I interviewed a manga artist. He's an author. He's got an artist from Indonesia, I think. He's from Qatar. And his stuff is on Manga Plus Creators. I think it's like over 20 chapters now. And it's literally, it's pretty much a female version of Fist of the North Star,
Oh, I'm
right?
familiar with the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Yasim for manga. And he didn't make it clear, but from my observation and what you just said kind of confirms my observation and conclusion that Saudi Arabia and Qatar are in a way turning circular. You know, they are not, they can have a conservative image and aesthetic, but ultimately they actually are becoming rather circular. They're not as strict and rigid as they used to be. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that you can't rely on the oil money forever. You know, you can't. You need to rely on something that people can come together as a collective and produce from. And using pop culture, comics, and movies, and so on, it's actually a very good investment. You know, I think this is part of the reasons why they're investing in this because apparently the new fighting game, City of Wolves, from Japan, SNK, the rival to Street Fighter, that was paid for by one of the Saudis. It was invested by oil money, and I was like, oh, really? Okay, that is something. So they're out here spending a lot of money on quality thus far. But my problem is, if they cannot distinguish between what is a Trojan horse for cultural Marxism and demoralization, they are going to get obliterated eventually, right? They have to be able to see through.
So I have some insights on that.
Okay.
Let's see, where do I start? So first of all, at a high level, yes, they're definitely moving in towards a liberalizing, just in the sense of the word liberal, not politically, but in the sense of like freeing their culture, from but the thing is that you're correct in the direction they're moving, but they're moving from such an extreme that they would still be considered extremely conservative. Now, how far will they go, in that shift in the future is a great question. We don't know. My wife actually has been doing Saudi Arabian Comic-Cons for many years now, and she's seen them go from kind of what you would think of as the classic ultra-conservative Muslim event to women are allowed to cosplay there now. Women are starting to be allowed to drive there now. But that's the move, right? It's not. It's shifting from an extreme to something that still looks pretty conservative to maybe the American viewpoint. And then where they go in the future, how much they let in will be, it's something you have to watch and find out. I really don't know. Now, where the interest comes from, though, a lot of these guys who are now running the shows, the 50-year-olds, I can say, I believe it's UAE, one of the sheiks who's behind all of the Comic-Cons there. And he's a really cool guy. He's got his own vault with the Batmobile in it, and like he's got the only copy of Superman #1 signed by the artist and the writer, and he's just got a cool collection. Well, he grew up going to a boarding school in Britain when he was a kid, and he would go to the comic book shop there. And a lot of these older, the generation that's becoming the new old generation, actually got educated or spent time abroad, and so they have a taste of that foreign culture, and now they're running the show.
You know, a lot of people obviously call me a pessimist and oh, you only see the doom and whatever. Well, what I learned from leaders in African countries, such as here, what you just described, the 50-year-old who's a big fan of comics and even has issue one signed and whatnot. Uh, Based on what I've seen here, most of people who then have power, who went to go study on the other side, and have great fascination with culture of the other side or entertainment stuff from the other side, they they unfortunately, for whatever reason, at any cost, will end up opening the gates too wide, because there's actually money to be made. Because I've seen the leaders of this side go to the other side and they obtain ideologies that they then implement extremely slow through two generations. That's how slow it is. It depends on the political state of the country, but currently Qatar and Saudi politically they still fine conservatively ultimately, but they go at it slow. So I ain't saying that eventually it's gonna get burnt down, but I am seeing that I'm seeing the signs, right? I'm seeing the Trojan horses, and I would tell everybody that well, this is your best time to capitalize now. It's the best time to actually create a target market rooted in Saudi and Qatar because that explanation of saying it's like the early 2000s, that is profound. That means it's literally in the golden age of this type of material because it was in
Very
the
much. Yeah.
exactly this is it. Now the golden age of 90s comics and early 2000s, well, I would say from what 1992 to 2006, right? That's over 10 years. That's like, let's see, 12 plus 6 is 18 years, right? So if we consider this the golden age right now in that region, everybody got around roughly 18 years to make a name for themselves there because the return of investment you want to make there, I say, is going to be greater than what you can make in Japan, as Japan is falling apart right now, right?
That's a good observation. I would say that you're right. I think it'll happen faster, just because we're a modern, connected world now. It'll happen faster. Maybe it's only a decade, but yeah, there's definitely a market in the Middle East it's huge. There's a thirst for Western content in the Middle East right now, and as you observe, yeah, Japan, I mean, is a dwindling population, and their demographics actually don't lend. And their demographics combined with their gatekeeping don't lend well to a foreigner, making it there, right? So yeah, I mean, and that's kind of my strategy. I have a whole lot of strategy and a lot of independent business machine that I'm building up right now, and that's part of it. Is like, okay, and we're about to get into that. Maybe this is the section where we transition into the Japan experience, but okay. I had a strategy, and it involved going to Japan with a Japanese manga, and that was not the correct strategy. And now I'm reassessing, and I think I have a much better plan where I'm going to, once I have success, Japan can be one of the later ones to pick up my IP. If that's something they want, they're going to be later down the chain in my strategy.
All right. That is what you call recalibrating your situation to fit the circumstance. You see, people,
Exactly.
this is what we do here at Coffee Comics. We got to figure out how the world actually works. This thing of being stuck on Discord and just hating on people or wishing that Viz Media just takes your stuff just because you're a nice person, that's some bullcrap, right? People are so afraid to assess the world, what's in front of them, right? To make a proper or take a proper risk. This lack of direction is just it's unacceptable, man. So okay, before we jump into the Japan thing, um, you mentioned that because the world is so much more interconnected. Yeah, I forgot about that part. It might happen sooner, but so far, how many times have you traveled to the Middle East to, have your conventions? And
Well, this is funny. So, um, most of this experience I'm giving you is through my wife, who's been there 3 or 4 times now, and so she's done that show, and then I was scheduled to go to the Middle East. Now, this is where you get into some dangerous territory here when you're playing with countries in the Middle East, in that uh, I was scheduled to go to Jeddah as a get. I'd be guested at Saudi Arabian Comic Con last year, and man, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say here, but it was back to back with Japan. So I was going to go to Japan fly into Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia straight to Tokyo. Let's just say that the show is put on by very wealthy people, and the wealthy people do it because they want to have it for themselves more than as a business. And so they decided last minute that the show would be relocated, which is, and just think about it logically, literally impossible. So they decided the show would be relocated purely because they wanted it in a different city. And so it was canceled last minute and moved. So this year will actually be my first year going there. But my agent has been to about 8 shows out there, and so he's very knowledgeable. We talked a lot about the situations out there in Japan, and then my wife's been there, done 3 shows. So I have a lot of experience through them. My first convention out there kind of got rug pulled from me, and it should be this winter that I go for the first time.
Okay. Um, you don't want to go into details like that. Okay, you don't have to give us the details, but explain to us, if you can, the that corrupt like business side real quick, because I'd say this is important so people don't get bamboozled, so people don't have that false hope that, yay, it's all in my favor, they want to benefit me. Of course not. It's about them as well. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and no matter what show you're doing, I mean, even here in the United States, there is use your imagination, and you're not even close. There's an incredible amount of politics behind every single Comic Con and show, right? Like, they are putting on an event that is giving you the opportunity to make lots of money and a career out of doing what you love, and so everybody would love to have a spot there and do that. And so, of course, there's going to be a ton of politics and a ton of things going on behind the scenes because they have that power and that ability. So even in the U.S., it's very similar. It's just that in the Middle East, instead of maybe a group putting on a Comic-Con like they do here in the U.S. and you having to deal with a certain type of politics that we're used to here, over there it's more of a one individual or 2 individuals could make a decision and change everything because they're the singular power behind that show, if that makes sense. But yeah, keep in mind, once again, we talk about keeping it real and like the risks of the business. If you're entirely based on in-person events, yeah, the showrunners, they control your life in the sense that they could pull that event away from you, just like lockdowns pulled events away from you.
All right. Yeah, that is, and all of this, I make sure to bring it up because you can't have all them eggs in that one basket. COVID
Exactly.
is the prime example of that. It shook the world and reminded those who are asleep that bad things do happen, you know. And I always see this here when a bunch of dudes get some money, right? Or even families, they can take enormous loans and think that, oh, I'll pay it off. The interest rate's pretty high, but things will always be fine. No. And then you have them in desolate situations because there was never a consideration that, look, you can't bet all your eggs with this one basket, bro. You just can't do it. So a lot of people did that, and COVID showed them flames. But I just had to reiterate. Okay, let's jump into the Japan. When did you go, and what was the occasion?
Yeah, the occasion was Tokyo Comic Con, and it was the last week of November going into the first week of December in 2024. So this is pretty fresh, happened less than, what is that, like less than 5 months ago. So yeah, like I said, the original plan was to go straight from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia to Tokyo. That got pulled from us, and so we went to Tokyo as a standalone trip, and we were guested at Tokyo Comic Con, and it was an incredible experience. You know, Tokyo Comic Con is one heck of a production. It's like half theme park, half half Comic Con in the sense of what we're used to here with American Comic Cons. There's a lot bigger stage production to it, like multiple K-pop stages, animatronics, all kinds of crazy stuff. So it was really cool. But I had some time on the front end and the back end of the trip built in, and so I was at the Imperial Palace. So I was at the Imperial Palace, hanging out in the gardens there, and I decided, you know what? Why not? I'm here. I'm only here once. Let's kick down some doors and see what we can get to happen. And so I had my manga on me, and I had it translated in Japanese and in English, printed versions in both languages, in preparation for this show. And I had them on me because I'm in Japan, and who knows who I might run into that it could be good to leave a copy with. So I look it up, and the Shueisha Shonen Jump physical magazine office is actually about 15-minute walk from the north side of the Imperial Palace Gardens. And so I was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. I had been studying Japanese, and I prepared a little message kind of telling them who I was, that I was being guested at Tokyo Comic Con, and that I wanted to show my manga to the editorial department. And I walked over there. It's anybody who's seen Bakuman, it's exactly like physically how it looks, exactly like Bakuman. The glass front, the like guards that are everywhere. There are guards everywhere at Shonen Jump to make sure you don't go anywhere except that front lobby desk. The cubicles that have absolutely nothing in them, where you have your really stiff formal meetings with an editor, it's just like that. But anyway, I went in and presented in broken Japanese to the kind woman at the front of the lobby, and she worked with me through my terrible Japanese and basically told me, "Well, get lost, kid. You need a scheduled appointment with an editor, and that takes lots of time, all that kind of stuff." So exactly what you think would happen. But she was really nice, and she said that, but she slipped me this paper. It was just a bunch of Japanese names and phone numbers, and it was everybody in the Shonen Jump office. And she highlighted one and said, "Take a picture of this number. This is who you call. Set up an appointment." Now, of course, for most people, that's really difficult because you can only set up an appointment in Japanese. Luckily, I had my translator who had translated the manga into Japanese for me. She was coming into town, and she was going to attend the Comic-Con for fun. So I called her up. I asked her if she could get on a call with me and schedule the appointment in Japanese. We scheduled it, and it was set up to happen right after Tokyo Comic-Con. So I did Tokyo Comic-Con. I got super blessed again, and that my translator had to leave right away because she was dealing with other con events down where she's from in what's that island? The island off the south end of Japan where she's from. And I met another translator who works at, I think it was like Kodakawa, one of the smaller pub houses in Japan. And he had contacts everywhere except for Shueisha. So it was advantageous to him. He wanted to tag along my meeting and translate for me at this meeting because he wanted to meet somebody and network with Shueisha. So I got super blessed again. Big man got up there looking out for me, provided a translator, and I had somebody who could understand the editor and then communicate back and forth between us. And after Tokyo Comic Con, I think it was 2 days later, we went back to the office. We had our meeting, and for anyone who has seen Bakuman, again, exactly like that. The kids like super stiff, like holding onto their pants, extremely nervous, and then like the editor's very stiff and like doesn't say anything. And yeah, it's exactly like that because the cubicles are completely bare, not a single thing in them. The editor did not speak barely acknowledged my existence that I was there, just sat down, took my manga. Of course, they still have the COVID glasses up. So not only is it boring and cold and like unfriendly, but the COVID glasses between you still for some reason. And this guy takes my manga and just reads it for like three or 4 minutes straight, says nothing, flips through it, just nodding his head. Then he turns it over, does it again. And it's not until like 5 or 6 minutes later, after just sitting there, that he finally looks up and starts talking to the translator there. And yeah, I guess, do you have any questions before I get into the conversation we had?
Let's see. Nah, so far it's all good.
Okay, great. Then I'll get into it. So the conversation we had was not great. It was very gatekeepy, very I try not to talk poorly about people. I try to talk only positively, and then if I have something to say, if there's a comic or a manga I don't like, I try not to say negative things. But the only way I can describe this conversation was gatekeepy and creatively bankrupt. It could be that I just got a young editor, and an editor who, maybe wasn't great because they didn't want to give the gaijin who walked into the office somebody who knew what they were doing. But the editor basically looked at me and told me, first of all, I could never be in the magazine because my artist was not Japanese and his style was not Japanese enough.
Wait.
Is...
Okay, now I remember first reading yours, and I did say that the whole setup definitely felt like Dune type thing, and I was worried that, maybe the Japanese won't like a heavy duty Western style, not even per se presentation, but the vibe. But that part you said the artist is not Japanese. Well, what do you mean by that? Like literally not Japanese by birth? Because if so, I do remember a case, somebody winning the silent manga competition, and they were from Indonesia too, I think, and they got published in Japan, and they replaced her, the writer and artist, with Japanese-born Japanese writer and artist. So what do you mean?
Yeah, so they're very protective of their industry. It is their people and their people's treasure, and they want to keep it that way, is my kind of feel I get from it. But literally what was said was that I was told that your art is not Japanese enough in style. And if you want to be a writer at Shonen Jump, we suggest you find an artist from Japan who will have a Japanese style. And I find that interesting because not only is it silly, I think being objective, right, not trying to be biased towards my own work, and I'm not the artist.
Hey guys, if you want to see the full video and its context, consider joining my Patreon. That's where the real caffeine is at. Cheers.